use the wax seals. We would be awesome planning places.
Hello, friends. Anyone who's here for the Punk Magic Talk, we're going to go ahead and start that. So thanks for coming out. If you don't know me, or who is this weird guy, I'm Tom Swiss. I'm the author of several books, which I even have some copies with around here somewhere. Why Buddha Touched the Earth? What Does It Mean for the Gods to Exist? And my new self-published little booklet here called Punk Magic. You can find links to all this stuff at my website, infamous.net, and I also blog at Pathos as the Zen Pagan. What I'd like to talk about today is a framework for thinking about magic. Sometimes we spell this magic with a K to distinguish it from the art of Christo, pulling rabbits out of hats and card tricks and stuff like that. So if you're looking for that, we're not going to be doing that today. Sorry. I actually had, if I had like one more hour, I was going to prime a little quick illusion, but I didn't have the time to do that for you.
Perfect hat.
Yeah, right. Let's pull the rabbit out of my hat.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know your background. One time I gave a talk about magic here at Starwood, and Oberon Zell showed up, which is sort of like having Jimi Hendrix show up to your guitar recital. So, if you're new to this, I hope it'll be a useful orientation. If you are already far more expert than I, maybe you'll get one or two ideas to take home with you, okay? Now, pardon me. Since you're here at Wisteria, you probably have some idea of what magic is. But let us quote a few authorities. It is always good to quote some authorities. So, Aleister Crowley, old Uncle Aleister. Magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. Therefore, Uncle Aleister tells us, every intentional act is a magical act. Another one from Crowley, this time writing with his mentor MacGregor Matthews. Our ceremonial magic finds down then to a series of minute, though of course empirical, physiological experiments. And whoso will carry them through intelligently need not fear the result. A famous definition from Dion Fortune. Magic is the art of changing consciousness at will. This one's a little longer, but it's from Margot Adler in her famous book, Drawing Down the Moon. Magic is a convenient word for a whole collection of techniques, all of which involve the mind. In this case, we might conceive of these techniques as including the mobilization of confidence, will, and emotion brought about by the recognition of necessity. The use of imaginative faculties, particularly the ability to visualize, in order to begin to understand how other beings function in nature. So we can use this knowledge to achieve necessary ends. And probably my favorite, though it doesn't use the M word directly, is from Ross Nichols. He was the founder of the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. Ritual is poetry in the realm of acts. I really like that one. Poetry in the realm of acts. So I want to talk about a framework for thinking about this art of magic, and really for thinking about art in general, that can help you find whatever style is right for you and encourage you to be an active participant. So, some of you might have Wicca books on yourselves, some of you might have Druidry books, some of you might have Chaos Magic. This is hopefully, if I'm on track here at all, it's kind of an overarching framework for thinking about all these different paths. Okay, and deciding which one or which combination will be right for you. Let me start by talking a little bit about my own history and why I started getting thinking this way. So I've been around the pagan festival scene for a while, since the late 90s. And my first festival, the one I've really developed the most connection with, is back in Maryland, the Free Spirit Gathering. Kind of my home event. And many years ago, we were having a big disagreement in our community about our fire circle, kind of our version of Paul, right? What brought it to a head was one night a drunk guy tried to leap the fire, and he did not clear it. He survived, but, the smell of scorched flesh kind of harshed everyone's mellow for the rest of the festival. And the arguments carried on in the off-season and like a mailing list. Back in the days before social media, when we did everything on email lists, right? And we had some people whose response to this was, see these party people at the fire. They are the root of all evil. This is sacred space. It must be formal and solemn with no tomfoolery. There was actually one post that said, while there is drumming going on, drumming is secret, and there should be no talking, and certainly no laughing while there is drumming going on. And then there were the other extreme of folks who were just like, hey, I'm just here to party with my friends, man. Leave me alone. Don't tell me what to do. This is a gathering in many ways. You don't have to do things your way. And a lot of what I've tried to do in magical workings over the years, big group workings, is trying to thread the needle between those two extremes there, right? The old dilemma between the Dionysian and the Apollonian. So discussion goes on. Lunchtime. So the discussion goes on, and I'm trying to find some common ground, some greatest common factor. I had a little inspiration from the muse, and I came up with this idea I call the fire circle triangle. If you've got a fire with a little bit of magical intent, you got some drummers, you got some dancers, you got a fire circle. The dancers going around in a circle around the fire. You've got a fire circle. Anything else is just a question of style. And I was actually able to get our practice community to buy into this, which is possibly my greatest work of magic ever. I actually wrote a little prose poem about it that appeared in the program for many years, and it was all good. But a year or two after that, we had Jeff McBride, Magnus, come to Free Spirit, and he hosted not a full version of his alchemical fire ritual, but kind of a stripped-down version, but it's still a very elaborate thing. If you've ever seen the Vegas Vortex, folks, they do the Vegas Vortex out there in Las Vegas. You travel around. He's done the alchemical fire ritual here at Wisteria for Starwood, a couple other events where they've had it. Now, let me be clear, I have the highest respect for Magnus. He is a trooper as a performer, and as a wisdom teacher, he walks his talk. A+, all the way. But he's a much more structured and organized person than I am. He once joked that he's a Virgo, and the way you can torture him is tie him to a chair in the middle of a room and go over and take all the pictures on the walls and move them just a little bit out of level. So he's that sort of very organized square person. He's got this whole theory for the AFR of astrological correlations of different zones around the fire and different parts of the evening or different parts of the alchemical process and everything. It's lots of structure. And somewhere along the line, when I was trying to talk about the contrast between this very simple idea I'd come up with and this very complicated, elaborate thing that Magnus had, I came up with the metaphor of rock and roll and punk versus prog. So in the 1970s, as punk rock was developing, there was a zine called Sideburns that featured this little cartoon in there. It's got 3 guitar chord shapes. This is a chord, this is another, this is the third. Now, go form a band. And I love it. This is just a great summary of the punk approach to music, right? Strip it down to its absolute bare essentials and go forward and do it. Do it yourself. Do it confidently. Do whatever you can do it. And we can contrast that with progressive rock, right? Oh my God, prog rock, very complex orchestration. You have to be a maestro of your instrument to even, get started on this. Lots of production in the studio. And it kind of struck me that in every art, we can kind of find these two trends, adding on and stripping away. Live theater. You've got stuff that takes place in black box theaters, and you've got very elaborately staged musicals. Or, these days you even have plays staged over Zoom because of COVID, right? Poems. You can have multi-volume epics. You can have a haiku that's just 17 syllables long, or prose poems in a very natural language. Painting can be hyper-realistic, almost photographic, or it can be a couple lines of just monochrome ink to try and capture a moment. One trend to elaborate and build up, another one to strip down. Baroque versus wabi-sabi. Another way we could put that. We could be fancy and call them catabolic and metabolic processes. But I'm a rock and roll. So I like to think of these as punk and prog. Structured, highly trained, free-form, self-taught. And neither of these, I'm not saying that either of these is better than another, right? They're two parts of a cycle. They're a yin and yang pairing. But your taste, will probably run more to one than to the other. And to really get the picture here, yes, we can add a second axis of tradition versus innovation. Then we have the 4 quadrants of art: classical, folk, prog, and punk. And we have currents that run up and down and left and right. So elaboration moves us from punk to prog, or folk to classical. Things get more and more elaborate, moving up that way. We also have back to basics movements that go the other way. Over time, institutionalization. New things become traditional over time. So prog becomes classical, right? Mozart was doing this very crazy stuff back in his day, and now he's just traditional. He's the new tradition now, right? And borrowing runs the other way, right? New things yoink from traditional things. So with the warning that the map is not the territory, let's think about where some different schools and traditions of magic that we have around today might fit on this graph here. So ritual magic, right? The high magic of the Hermetic magic, the Golden Dawn, Aleister Crowley, that kind of stuff. That has its roots in the 19th century. Some well-off upper-class people. These are people who were involved in things like Freemasonry and Theosophical Society, and they started using ritual magic as a tool for spiritual development. Now, these were people who were generally upper class. They had money. They could afford to buy lots of rare books and devote an entire room to being their magical space, and buy, all kinds of elaborate bits of equipment and this, that, and, didn't have to work for a living, so they had time to do all this stuff. So they had the resources. And there's also a trend in occultism to look backwards, to believe that the past was more magical than today. It's a bad assumption, but it's a common assumption. So we would put those guys in the classical quadrant, right? They are our classical magicians. So in the 20th century, we also have the rise of modern witchcraft, Gerald Gardner's Wicca, and the various paths that influenced. And sometimes we talk about Wicca as being a low magic, to contrast it with the high magic of those guys before. But Wicca and its related paths still have, they have roots in folk magic. Magic for the masses, power to the people. All right, I like it. But they're still very influenced by that Hermetic tradition. They still have hierarchical structure, different degrees of initiation, formalized student and teacher roles. Gardner's story, which we pretty much debunked by now, but his story was that he was reviving an ancient secret tradition that had been around for thousands and thousands of years. So, we could kind of give Uncle Gardner 2 spots on our graph there. One for the tradition somewhere near the border of classical and folk that he claimed to be doing, and one a little further along for the more innovative synthesis he was really sneaking in. Then we have folk magic, of course, down at the bottom left there. It's traditional, but doesn't need anything complicated. There's not a lot of formal history to it. It's like all those folk songs attributed to traditional. They weren't published. They were just spread around, mouth to mouth, until somebody finally wrote them down hundreds of years later. There's European cunning folk traditions. There's hoodoo here in the U.S., Pennsylvania Dutch powwow, kitchen witchery. A lot of traditional elements, but some are kind of looking to do new stuff, so maybe we'll put them on the border between folk and the punk there. I don't want to get hung up on the examples, the details. These are just some examples to get you thinking. On the upper right, we might put groups like ADF, the Druid group that has a formal curriculum, and even as they look to the past, they're explicitly trying to do something new. The alchemical fire ritual tradition that I mentioned before, very much in that Prague tradition. Mentioned Oberon, his Grey School. Again, kind of structured, trying to do something new. Might call them Prague. And that's all good. If any of those call to you, that's absolutely wonderful. But I want to focus on that bottom right corner there and the kind of things that I'm thinking about when I talk about punk magic. So, of course, chaos magic. Chaos magic, the workings, usually the classical chaos magic working is you make a sigil. Very simple. And you can find sigil generators online to help you with that, just not that complicated. Anybody can do it. Here's a Sharpie, here's a piece of paper, here's 5 minutes of instruction on how to charge this sigil. Boom, you're in. Pop culture magic, a lot of folks talking about that. Discordianism, any of my fellow worshippers of the goddess Eris, the turkey curse is pretty punk, if you know that one. If you don't, then just let that one wash over your head and go look it up. So is also the idea that every person on earth is a pope, and therefore not under the authority of the authorities. I think that's pretty fun. And the way to become an official episcopus of the Discordian Society is to declare yourself one. A lot of what I see folks doing under the label intuitive witchcraft. They're finding just the very basics and doing it themselves. So what I want to do is take the attitude that Sideburns cartoon had. Instead of 3 chords, I want to boil magic down to an easy 5-step process and send you out to do it yourself. In fact, first order of business, I'm going to let you in on a secret. You, yes, you, if you're in the sound of my voice, this applies to you. And if you're not in the sound of my voice, this applies to you. You are a magician.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear. Right? A lot of our myths and stories, we have this idea that magic is this very special thing that's only for some very special people who were born that way. I mean, Harry Potter, right? You have to be, he's a prophesied chosen one, and you have to be, of the blood or have a random thing happen. You might have Muggle parents, but you have the gene or whatever it is, right? Tim Hunter, Neil Gaiman's Books of Magic, again, prophesied chosen one. We got a lot of prophesied chosen ones in our myths about magic. Earthsea novels, my all-time favorite fantasy. Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea, Tales of Earthsea. Again, the wizardly protagonist, Ged, from the time he's a little kid, he's a precocious magician. There's no question. He's just like the best around. He's a natural talent. Boom. In the Arthurian mythos, Merlin becomes a great wizard because he's half demon. His dad's a demon. That's a heck of a way to get power, right? So no way any of us can become powerful like that. No, just our ordinary. Gandalf isn't even human at all. We forget that sometimes. He's like a being like an angel sent into that world by its creator. Now, these literary conventions, they have their place, right? We know that in a mystery, the detective's going to figure out who done it. In a romantic comedy, we know the couple's going to figure it out and finally get together, no matter what the misunderstandings along the way are. In an action movie, we know the good guy's not going to get shot, or maybe he gets winged, in the shoulder and survives to the dinner, right? They have entertainment value. They help orient us to the story, but they can also distort our understanding. When you think an action movie is the way combat actually happens, or you think a romantic comedy is how relationships actually happen. It's not healthy. So the same is true about magic. We have to be careful what we learn from fiction about it. So we need to put away that idea that magic is only for very special people who were born that way. Again, to quote Crowley, every man should make magic the keynote of his life. We would, of course, expand that with gender-neutral language today. But every person should make magic the keynote of their life. So you might know it, but you might not know it, but you are already doing magic. Now, this very logical argument that magic is for everyone might not be enough for you. You might accept it intellectually. You might accept it up here, but you might still have some reservations down here. I know some of you all don't need me to tell you that you're magic, okay? But some of you might be new to this. Some folks might be watching this later on a recording if the camera does like I hope it will. Some of you might be new to it. So what we're going to do a little magical work here. We're going to do a little transmission, a little attunement, a little thing, a little razzle-dazzle, a little charge. And this also help maybe open up your chakras or whatever for the rest of the event, okay? So because there's people here who are much more magical than I. But hopefully this working will attune you a little bit so they can give you even more of a good zap here, right? Now this is magic. We are by definition not bound by the ordinary rules of time and space. So if you're seeing this on video, even months or years later, it still counts. The first part of this is me convincing you. And this little ritual is also going to work as a scale model for some stuff we're going to talk about later. But the first part of this is me convincing you, not just intellectually, but on a deep level that I am magician enough to pass the power on to you. So, my friends, do you want to do magic? I'm going to ask you again. My friends, do you want to do magic?
Yes.
Now, I believe that what you tell me 3 times is true. I'm a sucker like that. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you want to do magic?
Yes.
All right, then hear me. Hear me. I am Thomas, son of Mark and Suzanne. I am the Star Chaser. I am the Zen Buffalo. I have walked with legendary warriors and great wizards. All this is true. Everything I'm telling you is true. I have breathed life back into the dead. With these hands, I have made the lame walk. I have cast down enemies. I have led hundreds in making magic. I am known from one side of this world to the other. I am warrior and bard, magician and healer, trickster and lover. I have climbed sacred mountains, followed visions that led me to enchanted groves. I have been blessed by the breath of the sky. I have kindled the fire, led the dance, beat the drum. I am here now in this place of power, and to sanctify this place and focus this power, I now make the ancient sign of the pentacle. And by my deeds, and by my songs, and by my blood, and by my bone, I tell you this. It is no small thing that has brought you here and now to hear my words. Let all doubts be purged and left behind, all fears dissolved. For a moment now, close your eyes. Take a deep breath, pulling in energy from the world around you, and let it out. Take another deep breath now, pulling up energy from the earth beneath you, the earth which always supports you, and let it out. Take now a third deep breath, pulling down energy from the sky, from the heavens, from the sun and stars that shine upon you, and let it out. And let your eyes open now, and by the power of this time and place, I tell you this. This is the call to magic. This is the sign you have awaited. Whether you now set foot on the path of magic for the first time, or whether you now renew a master's or journeyman's practice of years or decades, I tell you that the student is ready. And by the ancient law, the teaching now appears. Indeed, you are a magician. You are a magician. Yes, you are a magician. I have spoken. So say we are. Does everyone accept their magicians? Do I need to browbeat anyone further about this point? All right. So now that I've got you to commit to doing magic, what do we mean magic, right? We already cited some experts. Crowley's definition, magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. Every intentional act is a magical act. Ritual is poetry in the realm of acts. I would like to propose my own 5-point definition of magic. The 5 principles of magic. The Swissian principles of magic, if you will. Magic is distinguished by the intentional use of imagination to raise and direct psychological energy in order to alter consciousness in a way that will help bring about a specific desired change. Magic has an external side, where the desired change is some visible result, the achievement of some practical end. Magic also has an internal side. The desired change is some matter of self-cultivation, contemplative understanding, the quiet side of magic. Magic is a subtle practice where we leverage small forces and seemingly minor matters to produce great results. And magic is an art, operating in the realm of the poetic and the beautiful, metaphor and symbolism. All right, so how do we do it? Practically, if we accept that definition, those 5 points, how do we do it, right? Magic is an art The pieces of art that it produces are rituals, spells, workings, ceremonies. We can argue over our terms a little bit, but what we're talking about is a set of actions or words that are performed with intent, that manipulate mental symbols to create some desired change, and starts in our mind, and may move out into the world from there, but may also be intended just to act upon ourselves. So even when the ultimately desired result is something out there, the magician understands that change starts within. So, a magical ritual has 5 steps. These are your 3 chords, your magical 3 chords. Set your intention. Decide what you want. Raise magical energy. Do weird stuff. The magic is outside your comfort zone. Through words and actions, build a mental structure in which the weird stuff connects to what you want. You've got to direct that magical energy, cast the spell. 4th point, often neglected. You have to seal the deal. You have to return to the realm of ordinary time and space, bringing back with you the change that you wanted. You warmed your brain up, you made it soft to reshape it, but you got to let it settle in that mold before you put it back in the service. So it's going to go right back to the way it was. And the 5th, very important key to magic. Get off your ass! Because magic opens the door, but you have to step through it. Now these first 3 steps, set your intention, raise energy, direct energy. Generally you want to plan this shit, at least a little bit. Figure out how you're going to direct the energy before you raise it, but sometimes it doesn't work that way, right? Sometimes you just, suddenly you find that you have all this energy for whatever reason. You're in a circumstance that is very highly charged. So sometimes, sometimes these things happen out of order, these first 3 steps. It's funk magic. There's no rules, right? So let's go through each of these ideas in a little bit more depth. Intention. To quote the great Dr. Billy Bardo, intention is the glue and play is the spark. Or as Joe Jackson said, you can't get what you want till you know what you want. Can't get what you want till you know what you want. It's true. It's true. Magic is about change, but change is always happening. What sets magic apart is that it is willed change. Magician makes change happen in the way that they wish, in conformity with will, as we've said several times already. And that means the magician has to be clear about what they wish, right? There's a lot of tales in our mythology, magicians who didn't state things quite clearly. They left a loophole that a summoned spirit exploited, right? Or they phrased the spell ambiguously, and, well, they got what they asked for, but it wasn't quite what they wanted. Anyone who works with computers at all knows the difference between what I wanted and what I said. And the same applies here. And if we work magic in a group, it's really important that we share the same intent. Otherwise, we're going to be pulling the thing in different directions. Nothing's going to go anywhere. So in group workings, a really easy way to do that is wherever's leading the thing to just explicitly state that goal and ask if that goal meets with their approval. My friends, is it your will that so-and-so? My friends, do you want to work magic? Right? That's what I was doing. And you'll notice I like to repeat that question 3 times. Just really kind of zooms in. I kind of stole that from Ian Corrigan of ADF. He always likes to repeat those things 3 times. I said, he's good. I will steal that. So even if we're working solo, our minds are not always unified, right? We got one voice in the back of our head saying this, we got another voice in the back of our head saying this. It's like we got all these voices around the conference table. Sometimes I feel like I'm in an episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation. Picard's at the head of the table, and Worf is saying, we must attack them now. And Troy's like, no, we have to understand them. And Geordi's like, let's get out of here. My warp engines can warp us out of here at a moment's notice. We got all these voices in our head. If we clearly state our intent, we can bring a unity to those arguing voices in our head. Now, it's also possible to do this more subtly, to draw a group or even our own divided mind into one intent by setting the circumstances and the nature, how we set up the ritual. But don't neglect the power of a simple, straightforward declaration. This is the intent. This is what we're doing. Second step, energy. Do weird stuff. To do magic is to do something non-ordinary. It's about getting out of old ways of thinking, creating a new state of mind. So you have to do something new, something weird. You speak in a special manner. If I walked in, if I walked into my workplace talking like I just did during that little ritual, what's up with this guy? We're going to make him take some kind of pee test, right? We also did some breath work there, some visualization. Used the singing bowl. We couldn't quite hear it as well as I had hoped, but it's an unusual musical instrument, right? We invoked the pentacle, a symbol with ancient resonance, which is also vague enough that everyone can read into it what they want. When you raise energy, you chant special words or phrases, you wear special clothes, or you get naked. You use weird accoutrements like wands and candles and incense, ritual blades. You dance around, and of course there's the ritual use of sex in some traditions. You do weird stuff, right? There we go. We all know this meme from the internet. Where your comfort zone, where the magic happens. Anything that takes us out of ordinary consciousness, out of that comfort zone, sets up some sort of tension or excitement. It can be a way of raising energy. Part of the idea is, if I can do this weird thing outside of my comfort zone, if I can dance naked around the fire in the moonlight in front of my friends while they're drumming, if I can do that weird, difficult thing, or maybe I can do this other difficult thing, which I've set my intention. So an energy-raising practice has to stay weird, my friends. Otherwise, it just becomes a rote repetition. It doesn't have any ability to excite us. It's the preacher, in the church on Sunday repeating the same old word with no fire behind it all. And everybody just kind of comes in, drones the hymn, goes back home, and nothing has changed. If you come out of the Christian tradition at all, if you were raised, Pentecostal folks might have had much more energy in their church. But the Catholic church I went to, every Sunday, it's just the same thing. There's no energy going on there. So you can't do it half-assed. So we always need rituals that are new to us. Newly invented ones, ancient ones rediscovered, and this is why I get cheesed off when people say, no, you can't use that ritual from that other culture. No, we take rituals, ideas from other cultures because we need new ones to excite us. Of course, this is done disrespectfully, and that's bad. Don't disrespect it. But it's absolutely okay to borrow ideas from other cultures. It is what we have been doing since we first invented language, if not before. Point 3, make the weird stuff connect in your mind with what you want. So here you are with this energy, right? You've got this freedom from social convention. What will you do with it? So a lot of people will do weird stuff in their lives, right? You're here. You've already done weird stuff. A lot of people will do weird stuff just for the thrill, just for a sense of rebellion, to feel transgressive, whatever. But they don't do magic. This is the issue that we had that I was talking about at our fire circle, FSG, before, right? There's a lot of energy going around there, but some people were just there to party, and so they weren't touching the magic. They weren't tapping into that current of energy. And I would say if there's any danger in magic besides straining your ankle while dancing around or setting your house on fire with all those candles, it's raising energy that you then do not properly direct, right? That's all those stories of magicians raising spirits that then turn on them is about. You got to direct that energy once you raise it. Now, to do anything with electrical energy, you build a circuit. Wires and switches, transducers, resistors, capacitors, all that good stuff. To do anything with mechanical energy, you have some type of machine, levers and gears and all that good stuff. In the same way, to work with magical energy, you need a structure. A ritual, a spell, a working, whatever you want to call it. We can argue about the terms. What's important is that the structure is something in an artistic mode. Starhawk said, ritual is partly a manner of performance, theater. And again, Ross Nichols, poetry in the realm of acts. What we're doing is in some ways the same order as a poem or a play or a piece of music or a dance. In fact, all those other arts can be part of a ritual, right? We're dancing around Paul, people singing down there, writing poems for rituals, all that good stuff. So maybe we can say that magic is even like a meta art. Something to think about. So in our little ritual before here, a little attunement, a little initiation ritual, the structure was me convincing you that I have authority. That's a role I'm putting on the top hat, playing a role, standing up here, doing the character. Then me using that authority to tell you what you needed to hear. It's a pretty simple structure, but that's the point. It can be, yes, my friends, it can be just that simple. The ritual links our intention to the energy that we've raised. If we're doing an initiation ritual, we use that energy to alter our definition of ourselves. In a prosperity ritual, we use that energy to alter our relationship with money. In a healing ritual, we mobilize physical, mental, spiritual, social resources for healing. The structure can be very elaborate or very simple. Again, punk versus prog, right? It can be fixed by tradition. It can be an ancient ritual, or you can improvise it on the spot. It can be a solo performance. It can be created by a group. It can be performed in front of hundreds of people. You could be doing it by yourself. It could be an original work, or it could be a cover, somebody else's work. We all have our own preferences there. But let me point out a few points to consider when you set out to design a ritual. If we're taking the idea of theater as a metaphor, then we have to set the stage. Just as a stage is a place set apart from ordinary time and space, by being elevated or having the curtain around it or lighting, however you're working on the stage. I'm up here on this raised platform. This must be a thing, right? Why am I up above everyone else here? It must be a thing. An effective ritual is marked as being outside of ordinary reality. Of course, many rituals start with some type of magical circle. You probably have an idea what that is. If you're here, it's a container and a concentrator for the energy that we raise. It's also a boundary that lets us keep out the things that we don't want to invoke. So you want to have some way of marking your working as being outside of ordinary time and space. Now in our little example earlier, I just told you, I said, by definition, we are outside of ordinary time and space. It's a simple way to do it, but we're already here at Wisteria at a festival, so don't need too much more to convince you that we're outside of ordinary time and space, right? And just like the actors on the stage have their costumes, magicians have their vestments. Some prefer to don elaborate regalia, get all gussied up, do their thing. Some folks like to get naked to do their rituals. Either way, you got to have something that's a little bit unusual, something a little bit special to break out of ordinary thinking. You can do ritual in your ordinary jeans and t-shirt sort of thing, but dressing up gives it a sense of occasion, gives it some extra power. That's why sports teams, armies, doctors and nurses all have their uniforms. The Catholic priest has his stole, the Buddhist has their kessa. You put on your uniform, and it helps you get into the role. Even a piece of jewelry, a little necklace, an earring, can help you get into the role. And just like actors have their props, magicians have their ritual implements. Simple little wand there. Tools for manipulating the energy of ritual. Ceremonial magician's wand. The holy water used in Catholic practice. The feme of Wiccans. The pipe of the Plains Indians. The hare, gushi whisk used in Shinto rites. Have you ever seen that? Like you might see that in anime, some Shinto rites there. Some folks like ritual tools that are never used for ordinary purposes, so you can keep a sense of occasion. Some folks like to use the same kitchen knife they use for cutting up veggies. It's good either way, whatever your preference is there. And just like any play or story has like a rising and falling action, maybe a few cycles of that if you have a longer story. In any ritual, You have the idea of raising power, directing that power, and then resolving back to ordinary reality, rising and falling action. And in a big ritual, again, you might have a few cycles of that. So these are just a few things you can consider when you're thinking about how to direct that energy. The next part, resolving back to ordinary reality. Cool down, seal the deal, right? How many of you have ever made a New Year's resolution? Yeah, okay. Then you know that it's one thing to make a resolution, it's another to keep it. It's another to make that change stick around, to make it last. Our consciousness, I like to think of our consciousness as thermoplastic. You can reshape it if you warm it up, right? So we can warm up our consciousness by raising energy and then reshape it in the ritual. But then we have to go back to the ordinary world. If we don't let our consciousness cool in its new shape, then it's going to go right back to the way that it was before. We have to let it firm up a bit before we place it back into ordinary use. So just like, excuse me. So just as a novel, a film, any other type of story like that doesn't just cut off after the climactic moment, right? We don't have Luke blows up the Death Star and that's the end of the movie, right? No. We got to have a resolution back. We got to like tie up our loose ends and cool everything down there, right? An effective ritual has to allow for gentle resolution back to ordinary consciousness. It's a good idea for that resolution to guide us in a new direction, to remind us of what has changed. You know, we often end group rituals. It's kind of a cliche, but it's a good way to do it. You know, we say, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Well, what am I directing your brain towards when I say that? Oh, let's be merry. We're merry now. Let's keep some of that merriment about us. That's a good idea. I like that. Okay. Very simple, but really important. In our little model ritual, we had a moment of silence there as you breathed in, and then I cracked a little joke. I need to browbeat anybody into accepting that, right? To break any resolve, any remaining tension, bring us back to ordinary time and space. These all let us know we're taking your brain out of the kiln now. We're going to let it cool down. And the fifth step in this model, an oft-overlooked key to magic. This was elucidated by the Reverend Ivan Stang of the Church of the Subgenius way back in 1998. And I'm gonna try and give you a channel Stang here a little bit and quote his words from his 1998 Earth First Devival rant. I want to talk about magic and religion and dumb fuck superstitions. I saw the $15,000 Scientology magazine. Somebody stole my bike, but I went and looked for it all over the neighborhood for it, and I found it. That man learned King Bob Solomon's first key to magic. Get off your ass. If you want a girlfriend, talk to a girl. If you want a new job, talk to other companies. If you want to machine gun a stadium, getting off your ass. The first step. Pretty important part of the process. Magic opens the door, but you still have to step through it. There's no substitute for putting in the work. Wish there was, been looking for it all my life. But I've not yet found any substitute for actually doing the work. So in terms of our little model ritual, that part's up to you. You know, I can't put the work in for you. I can't do the magic for you any more than I can smell the flowers for you. I can't be a magician for you. Now maybe, this all seems a little abstract, this 5-step ritual process and all these principles and everything. But we've said a couple times, magic is part of our lives, whether we make it deliberately or not. So let's look at a familiar, concrete example of this. A couple going out on date night. So the date is by definition a special time, right? You've agreed, you marked it on the calendar. You probably go somewhere special. No, you don't go somewhere you ordinarily go. At least, before COVID, that's how we did it. Now we're all still figuring out how we do this in the new normal, right? They dress up for the night, special vestments, special clothes to help them get into the role. Maybe flowers, get bought, that flowers are an ancient magical tool dating back to Neanderthal times. The couple shares the intention to develop the romantic connection, at least if the date's going to go well, they share that intention, right? To make a deliberate change in their minds. They act in a non-ordinary manner, a little more romantic, a little more tender towards each other. However that applies to their thoughts. And with any luck, the date leads to an act of physical and emotional intimacy that draws them closer together. And the transition back to mundane life is gradual. If one partner immediately bolts out of bed, goes about their business, it's not going to work very well, right? Get a little cuddle, a little afterplay. Same thing when we design our rituals. And if it's successful, it inspires them to do the work, to get off their asses, to do the work that it takes to make a relationship succeed. So magic is not something foreign to our lives, not something strange. You're already all doing it. So you might as well get good at it. Decide what you want, do weird stuff, make the weird stuff connect in your brain with what you want, seal the deal. And my friends, you got to get off your ass. Now go form a band. So thank you for listening. And in conclusion, I'd like to share some words, some great magical advice from the great Dr. Billy Bardo, the Bardo brothers. If magic is an art, worked from will and from the heart, listen to your inspiration and not to your fears. If magic is an art, worked from will and from the heart, listen to your inspiration and not to your fears. So thanks for listening, folks, and that's about all I had to say on the topic. I'm happy to hang out. We can chat some more. Comments, questions? I have books for sale. I have a few copies of my book, Punk Magic. They have 1 or 2 copies of Why Buddha Touched the Earth.